name is V, like the letter, but with two E's in front of it. And this is the second official video of this channel. But this video, I'm going to go a little bit more in depth into my previous video about the book that I like, Jane Eyre. Whereas the other video, I just, talk about why I liked it. This time I'm going to focus on one of the characters that really fascinated me, which is Bertha Mason, the wife of one of the main characters, Eyre, Rochester. So this will have spoilers in it, so I'm just gonna put that out there. First, a summary of what the book is about. The book Jane Eyre was a novel published in 1847 by the author Charlotte Bronte, and it tells the story of a young orphan girl trying to find her way in a world that is quite stingy in love and affection. And it just follows her as a child into a young woman, where she comes under the employment of this man named of this rich bachelor named Rochester, and they fall in love, face obstacles and secrets along the way, and it's a happy ending eventually. But it's just how the overall experience, the story, learning about independence and the capability of a woman, and what it really means to find a place to call home. That's really how I would describe it. So, Bertha Mason. Bertha is the wife of Edward Rochester. Yes, I said wife. I know I just said that Edward falls in love with Jane, but he had a wife while he was doing it. I'll get into it. Her character acts like a phantom, in a way. A phantom plaguing both Jane and Rochester. With really everyone at Thornfield. The estate of Rochester, that's his house. She's hidden away, like in an attic, because she's mad. Her madness. She represents the past of Rochester, as well as and get this basically what Jane could have become, what she wants to avoid to become. So, how madness used to be dealt with. Okay, so I saw this YouTube video once. It was about a young woman who was locked away by her mother because she wanted to run away. She wanted to elope with this man that her mother did not approve of. Her mother locked her in a room and said she will only be able to come out if she agreed that she would not ever see this man again. So the girl said no, and for 25 years she was there, starved away in that room, wasting away, screaming for help. And the people of the house could hear her, but they would either ignore it or they fear for their lives. So eventually she was rescued. Her mother was arrested, and it seemed like a good enough ending. But the girl really lost her life. She really lost her life in that room. And her name was Blanche Monnier. You can find it online. Now, while folks would ask the mother about her daughter and where her whereabouts were, and they could hear her crying, her mother would just say that her daughter was crazy and she didn't want anyone to know. Now, I tell this story because, similar to Bertha, where mental illness was overlooked. This is why mental illness is important, because people really used to lock away their family members if they have mental illness for various reasons. Now, instead of getting them help, they were ashamed of them, they didn't believe them, or sometimes the treatment done to treat them was really just atrocious. Like, they dealt with physical illness. It was dealt with like physical illness, like, you know, experiments and lobotomy, stuff you basically see in horror films, because it was a horror. So with Monnier, she didn't have a mental illness, but her example is similar to Bertha because Rochester really was ashamed of her. He took care of her because he had an obligation, and he promised her brother to take care of her, and he acted like a bachelor completely throughout the book. Completely disregarding this woman, completely making her seem like a ghost, and you know, that came out at night, snuck around the house, messing things up, but because she will not be ignored. She will not be ignored. So, was she even crazy? They say actions speak louder than words, and that's very much true for this woman. We never hear her speak, but we know that her emotions are strong. We know that she has anger. We know that she has an extreme dislike for Rochester. And you know, I thought she disliked Jane. I didn't like her either because I thought she was just an obstacle in her and Jane and Rochester's love. But when you look at it, when you examine it, who she goes after and what she doesn't go after Jane. Rochester is her enemy. That makes sense because her husband locked her away, ignores her existence, and parades himself about like he's a single man, and focuses all his attention on getting this young woman while she's still in the house, having to witness this betrayal. If you think about it, we are told she's crazy, right? We are never given a chance to judge for ourselves. In fact, even Jane tells us she's mad, and we've never met the woman. Now, Jane is telling this story from her point of view. So what she tells us, we believe. And her views are our views. So she's a menace to us because Jane describes her as such. Now, if you even read the book, like chapter 25, she described when Bertha was basically about to burn down Rochester while he was sleeping in his bed. Jane says this. She felt it was a weird sound, and she said this was a demonic laugh, low, suppressed, and deep, uttered as it seemed at the very keyhole of my chamber door. The head of my bed was near the door, and I thought at first the goblin laughter stood at my bedside, or rather crouched at my pillow. But I rose, looked around, and could see nothing. While I still gazed, the unnatural sound was reiterated, and I knew it came from behind the panels. Then she was like, who was there? You know, there was a gurgling, there was a moan, and she thought it was Grace Poole because, you know, she suspected Grace Poole. Was she possessed by the devil? She hurried, she was surprised, there was a startle, and who was laying in the bed about to burn? Rochester. Mason, Bertha could have heard Jane. She could have heard Jane. She could have hurt Jane, but she didn't. She went after Rochester. Rochester is her enemy. And even when it came to the wedding, when Jane accepted, you know, she wanted to marry Rochester, and they were talking about the wedding dress, Bertha ruined the wedding dress, but not Jane. She didn't hurt Jane. She could have hurt Jane. Rochester does not like to spend time in that house because Bertha is in the house. Now, what does Jane said? Still, chapter 25. So because Miss Fairfax was telling him that he doesn't stay at home very much. Why? I asked myself. What alienates him from the house? Will he leave it again soon? Miss Fairfax said he seldom stayed here longer than a fortnight at a time, and he has now been resident 8 weeks. If he goes, the change will be doleful. Suppose he should be absent spring, summer, and autumn. How joyless some sunshine and fine days will seem. the man does not stay there very long. And the reason why he stayed that long is because of Jane. He was pursuing this girl. Now, what does she represent? If you look at analysis online, they say that Bertha represents the role of a trapped Victorian woman. Because remember, I said that women at the time had their worth, like they were worthy by the men in their life, and you know, the wealth that the men had because they were associated with that wealth. You were giving wealth to the man in your life. And even if Bertha was not originally a Victorian woman, she married a Victorian man. Heck, her brother pretty much probably might have gotten her into it. Maybe she thought she was going to this lavish place where this man was going to love her, but no. Because Rochester didn't even want to be in a marriage. The whole thing was contrived. It was arranged by his brother and his own father. It was contrived. Like, no one was happy in this marriage. He wanted to escape. She wasn't happy. Like, she probably was a free woman before she met this man, and she had to be put into this marriage, most likely by her brother, because he's a man. Now, that's probably why she hurt her brother when he came to visit, and he started to bleed. She hurt him. She doesn't like him. She doesn't like him. So she lost her mind in that house, in that attic. And she also represents what Jane fears, because while Jane loves Rochester, she does not want to be trapped. She does not want to be in a role where she can't be herself. I mean, come on. It makes sense. This was a woman that came up through her own strength. This was a woman that knew independence all her life. That's all she knew, because nobody loved her. Nobody really took care of her like she should have been as a child. She was educated. She brought herself up. She learned things through her own strength. And how terrible would it all be for it to just be taken away from her because of marriage to this man that she's supposed to love her, that, you know, does love her, but society said that she should not have a voice beside him. How terrible would that be? The whole wedding was rushed, and it made her uncomfortable. It made me uncomfortable, to be honest. It was just rushed. She didn't even want to change her style when Rochester wanted to lavish her in all these expensive gifts, because it wasn't her. Stop trying. She didn't want to be masked up into this person that she was not. It was just the pressure of marriage, because this man wanted to get out of his old marriage. He wanted to be with Jane, but it was just a pressure. He was pressuring her. She felt like everything was rushed. People were not really, I guess, happy for them. It was just so uncomfortable. Like, there was something to hide, something to just be done with. Rochester wanted his own escape desperately from Bertha. Jane has a fire in her. However little we may see it, you know, the whole jealousy thing with Blanche Ingram, and we see it when she didn't believe that Rochester loved her. This little fire that she has in her that comes out every now and then, while Bertha is truly fire, and it always comes out. Whatever little flame Jane has that burns in her every now and then, she does not want it to be extinguished. She wants to hold on to it. You know, it's a part of her. Even by marriage, she has gone through enough of that. She has gone through enough and has grown up with people trying to extinguish who she was, even as a small child. And you see that even to the very end, Bertha would not be silenced. She longed for freedom, even when she ended her own life. She did it through her own means. She did it through her means. She would not let this man trap her any longer, because she felt that if she was to forever, you know, not be seen as this menace and this phantom, she might as well go out through her own means, through her own strength. So the man would, you know, Rochester was trying to reel her back in from the edge of the tower, she looked at him and she knew that if she went back with this man, all he was going to do was trap her again and put her in some other cage. So finally, she just took her life. And as you know, as she was doing it, she had her hands up like a bird, like she was flying. She was falling, but she was flying. And that was freedom. That was freedom to her. So I, you know, when I learned about it, reading about it, Bertha didn't seem like such a menace anymore. You felt rather sorry for her because Rochester didn't treat her right. Rochester didn't treat her right because Rochester didn't even want to be in a marriage to her, which is understandable because they were both in a contrived situation, but he could have done better for her. Rochester was always trying to escape his own situation, escape something, and Bertha longed for freedom, so eventually something had to give, and she decided it might as well be her own life. So anyways, that's the video. It was short. I wanted to make sure I didn't want to make it as long as the last video, but thank you once again. Jane Eyre, the best book that I know, and maybe I'll make another video about something else. I don't know, but we'll see. Okay, bye.